The Force is old and full of shadows.
The Boonta Eve Classic ends the way all races end on Tatooine. In noise and dust and the smell of burned fuel hanging over the canyon like smoke from a funeral pyre. Anakin Skywalker stands in the winner's circle and feels the roar of the crowd move through his chest like a physical thing. Sebulba's pod is still burning somewhere out beyond the canyon walls. The boy can hear it, a distant rhythmic crackle carried on the hot desert wind. He is 9 years old. He has just won his freedom. Qui-Gon Jinn kneels in front of him, and his eyes are the kindest thing Anakin has ever seen in a human adult. Not pity, not agenda, something closer to wonder. "Anakin," Qui-Gon said quietly, his voice disappearing beneath the crowd noise so it existed only between the two of them. "You're free. Pack your things." The joy arrives whole and without warning, flooding up through his sternum, and then it stops. It stops because he looks past Qui-Gon's shoulder and finds his mother's face. Shmi Skywalker stands 10 feet away with her hands clasped in front of her and tears tracking silently through the dust on her cheeks. She is smiling. The smile is the most heartbreaking thing he has ever seen, because he understands it completely. It is the smile of a woman who has decided that her son's freedom is enough, that it has to be enough. She isn't coming. The sentence forms fully in his mind, crisp and final as a circuit completing. Qui-Gon won his freedom in the bet. Only his. Shmi still belongs to Watto. Shmi will still wake up tomorrow inside those walls, and the day after that, and the day after that, until the desert takes her. Anakin looks down at the half-packed bag in his hands. He sets it on the ground. He has thought about this before. Not as a daydream, as a plan. Long after his mother fell asleep, lying on his back in the dark with the twin moons casting pale stripes across the floor, he had worked through it methodically, the way he worked through engine problems. Identify the constraint. Find the gap in the system. Apply force to the gap. The constraint was always the same. The chip. Every slave in Watto's stock carried one, a subcutaneous transmitter the size of a thumbnail, placed deep enough that pulling it out killed you before freedom ever arrived. Watto controlled the detonation frequency from a ledger slate he carried on his belt during business hours, and locked in his sleeping quarters at night. But the slate had to be somewhere. And Watto's shop was full of junk. He waits for the second moon to set. The shop looks different at this hour. Without the daytime clutter of customers and Watto's barking, the stacks of salvage cast long geometric shadows, and the smell of scorched metal and engine grease is so dense it sits on the back of the tongue. A single work light flickers in the far corner, buzzing with the particular frequency of a dying power cell. Anakin doesn't touch it. He moves by memory and by something else, a low, wordless pressure in his hands that has guided him through tight mechanical work his whole life without ever having a name. Qui-Gon had a name for it. But that was a conversation for later. Watto's ledger slate is on the workbench. Not locked away, Watto had never imagined a slave child would know what to do with it. That had always been the gap. The Toydarian thought his property wasn't smart enough to be dangerous. Anakin picks up the slate and sets it beside the disassembled pit droid he'd been quietly cannibalizing over the last 6 weeks. The droid's logic circuit is a near-perfect match for a short-range signal jammer. He'd confirmed that 3 months ago, then waited. Because there was never a night with enough chaos to cover what came next. Tonight, the whole town is drunk on the race. He pulls the circuit free with 2 fingers, reaches for the power cell he'd pocketed from a dead comlink, and begins to work. The technique isn't elegant. Anakin doesn't need elegant. He needs the chip's explosive core to discharge without detonating. A controlled fry. Just enough current to burn out the trigger mechanism while leaving the transmitter itself inert on the slate's registry. If he overloads the frequency by half a band, the chip reads as active to the system but fires nothing. If he underloads it, nothing happens at all. He strips the last wire with his thumbnail, touches it to the contact. A small spark. Blue-white. The ledger slate chirps once, a sound like a question, and goes quiet. He holds his breath for 3 full seconds. His mother doesn't detonate. He lets the breath out slowly through his nose and sits with that fact for a moment. The way you sit with the end of something. Then he accesses the slate's financial registry. Watto's betting records are exactly as disorganized as Anakin expected. A chaotic tangle of favors owed and credits outstanding that the Toydarian had never bothered to reconcile. At the bottom of the ledger sits a line item, Skywalker, S, racing collateral, pre-classic. The amount Watto had wagered against the race using Shmi as leveraged property. He'd lost that bet when Anakin crossed the finish line. Anakin routes the lost collateral into a freedom paper transaction. Watto just bought Shmi's freedom with money he'd already lost. Poetic, in the way that only things that are also true can be poetic. He puts the slate back, exactly where he found it. Pre-dawn. The sky above Mos Espa is the color of a bruise healing, deep purple at the edges, going amber at the horizon where the first sun is beginning to threaten. Shmi doesn't speak for the first 3 blocks. She walks with her son's hand in hers, and her eyes fixed forward, and her jaw set in an expression Anakin recognizes as the one she wears when she is deciding whether something is real. The chip, she finally said. Discharged. The registry still shows it active. A pause. Watto won't know. Not until he checks the collateral line in the ledger. That might be weeks. He glances up at her. We'll be a long way from here in weeks. Shmi stops walking. He stops with her and waits, because he knows what this is. She puts both hands on his face. Her palms are rough, the hands of someone who has fixed machines in desert heat for years. And she looks at him with an expression that lives in the exact space between devastated and proud. You planned this, she said. It isn't an accusation. For a while. How long? He considers. Since I was 7. Shmi closes her eyes. When she opens them, the tears are steady and silent, and she doesn't try to stop them. My son, she said. Just that. Like the 2 words contained the entire argument. Qui-Gon is standing at the foot of the Naboo ship's boarding ramp when they come around the last corner of the landing field. The tall Jedi has his arms crossed loosely and his travel cloak moving in the pre-dawn wind. He watches them come, the boy and the woman walking side by side through the empty streets of Mos Espa as the sky goes pale above the canyon ridgeline. He doesn't move. He doesn't speak. He simply watches. When Anakin stops in front of him and meets his eyes, Qui-Gon's expression holds something that the boy doesn't have a word for yet. It is the look a person gets when a thing they thought they understood reveals a second floor they hadn't known was there. You went back to the shop, Qui-Gon said. Yes. A long pause. The wind moves between them. Is she free? The papers are legal. He won't be able to contest them. Qui-Gon looks at Shmi, then back at Anakin. He unfolds his arms and steps aside from the ramp without another word, which is the only response that would have been adequate. The ship doors seal with a soft, pressurized hiss. Shmi finds a viewport near the rear of the passenger compartment and stands in front of it with her arms crossed over her chest. Below, Tatooine is already shrinking, the canyon systems flattening into the vast orange geometry of the Dune Sea. And somewhere in that expanse, too small now to see, Watto's shop and the slave quarters, and every morning she had woken up inside those walls. The twin suns are both fully above the horizon. The light off the desert surface is blinding. She watches until the planet is a sphere. Then smaller than a sphere, then a point. She doesn't look away until it's gone. The Jedi Temple at dawn. 5 spires rising above Coruscant's endless city grid, catching the first light off a billion windows below. From the landing platform, the structure looks less like a building than like something that grew here, ancient and deliberate, rooted in the same bedrock the city had buried 10,000 years ago. Anakin walks through the entrance hall with his chin up. He has decided, somewhere over the outer rim, that he will not be afraid of this place. He has catalogued the reasons. He has already freed his mother, already flown a pod racer at speeds that should have killed him, already crossed half the galaxy on a ship crewed by people who speak to each other, in the clipped, comfortable shorthand of people who trust each other with their lives. The temple is just a building. The council is just a room full of people. He almost believes it. Shmi is not with him. She is 2 levels below, in the temple's residential wing, in a small clean room with a window that looks out over the city, the first room that has been entirely hers in as long as she can remember. Anakin had watched her cross the threshold and stop in the doorway, one hand on the frame, just standing there. He hadn't said anything. Some moments don't need commentary. Qui-Gon walks beside him now, unhurried, his presence a steadying weight at Anakin's left shoulder. "They'll ask you questions," Qui-Gon said. "What kind?" "The kind that don't have wrong answers. They want to understand how your mind works." A brief pause. "Answer honestly and precisely. Don't perform." Anakin considers this. "What if they decide I'm too old?" Qui-Gon doesn't answer immediately. That in itself is an answer of a kind. Confirmation that the concern is real, that Qui-Gon isn't going to paper over it with reassurance. "Then we'll have that conversation," Qui-Gon said finally. The council chamber occupies the peak of the temple's central spire, 12 seats in a circle, morning light streaming through the curved windows on all sides, painting the floor in long gold panels. The room smells faintly of wood oil and something older beneath it. Incense, maybe. Or just the accumulated weight of centuries of the same conversations held in the same circle. Anakin stands in the center and doesn't fidget. He looks at each face in turn, the way he used to catalog customer types in Watto's shop, reading the tells, the postures, the small signals that said this one haggles or this one has already decided. Mace Windu sits with his hands folded, and his expression arranged into something that is technically neutral, but radiates a careful, surgical attention. Yoda's eyes are half closed, which Anakin already suspects means the opposite of inattentive. They test him. Images, sequences. A screen shows a series of objects and removes them and asks what he saw. He names every one. They show him something moving fast across a field and ask where it will be. He points to the correct position before it arrives. Then, Yoda speaks. A long pause, as if the syllable itself needed to settle. Clouded. "Your future is. But your past. Feel it." "I can." A wait. Carried long. Anakin meets the small master's eyes. "My mother." "Yes," Yoda tilts his head. "And now, she's here, in the temple." He keeps his voice level. "She's free." Something moves across Yoda's face. Not surprise, something older than surprise, closer to recalibration. His gaze becomes precise in a way that is slightly different from how it was a moment before. Mace Windu leans forward 2 degrees. "You freed her." "Last night. On Tatooine." "Yes, how?" Anakin tells them. Plainly, without embellishment, the ledger slate, the pit droid circuit, the jammer, the collateral line in the registry. He watches Windu's expression as he speaks and notes the exact moment it shifts from skepticism to something harder to name. "You're 9 years old," Windu said. "Yes, and you built a signal jammer from salvage parts, accessed a financial registry, and legally transferred your mother's ownership papers without waking her owner or triggering a single alert. The registry wasn't locked," Anakin said. Watto didn't think he needed to lock it. A silence fills the chamber. Not empty. Textured. Layered. The 12 masters processing something at whatever speed 12 masters process things. Yoda's eyes are fully open now. He looks at Anakin with the expression of someone reading a document they have read before, but finding a passage they missed. "Afraid," Yoda said quietly. "Afraid to lose her, I expected to sense." He considers. "But no gap. Between what you wished and what you did, there is. A child who has already acted." Another pause. Interesting, very. Mace Windu does not look convinced. He looks, if anything, more tightly wounded. A child who acted unilaterally, in the middle of the night using stolen access to someone else's private property, redirected collateral, Anakin said. He lost the bet. The money was already forfeit. Windu stops. The silence this time is different. "Crisper, he's right," said a master near the window. Quietly, Windu sits back. His expression hasn't changed, but something behind it has shifted by a degree. He looks at Anakin the way Anakin imagines a weapons inspector looks at something that arrived unannounced on the manifest. "The Force is strong with him," Qui-Gon said from the doorway. "Stronger than any I've encountered." "His midi-chlorian count, we have the count," Windu said. Another silence. This one has weight in it. Yoda speaks, and his voice has settled into a register that is slower and more deliberate. each word placed with the care of someone setting down something fragile. Train him, we should, but watch him, we must. Not for fear, and here the ancient master pauses, for understanding. A boy who has already solved his hardest problem. What drives such a boy, This, we must learn. They give him a room. Small, high-ceilinged, with a sleep mat on a raised platform and a window that looks east over the city. He stands at the window for a long time after Qui-Gon leaves, watching the air traffic lanes braid and separate in the middle distance. He is a Jedi initiate. The word doesn't feel like anything yet. He suspects it will take time to feel like something. The same way Free had taken time on the ship, the reality arriving in slow increments rather than all at once. He goes 2 levels down and knocks on his mother's door. She opens it and sees his face and reads it accurately without him saying a word. They said yes, Shmi said. Provisionally, she makes a soft sound that isn't quite a laugh. Of course, provisionally. She steps back to let him in. The room is still neat, still a little unused looking, the small marks of habitation not yet accumulated. A single cup on the table. Her travel bag open but not unpacked. He sits on the edge of the bed and she sits next to him, and for a while neither of them says anything, which is something they have always been good at. Mace Windu thinks I'm impulsive, Anakin said. Are you? He thinks about the 6 weeks of waiting, the 3 months of planning before that, the careful accounting of Watto's ledger. No, he said. I know. She takes his hand. Her grip is steady. He'll figure that out. The Naboo crisis ends the way history ends, fast and incomplete. Full of gaps the official record never bothers to fill. Anakin flies in the battle above Naboo because there is no version of events where a 9-year-old boy sitting in a Naboo N-1 starfighter doesn't end up in the cockpit when the shooting starts. He destroys the droid control ship. He doesn't pretend he meant to do all of it. Qui-Gon does not die in the Theed generator complex. That is the fact that changes everything downstream, though Anakin won't understand the full weight of it for years. Qui-Gon fights Darth Maul alongside Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the two of them are enough. Barely, in ways that will keep both men quiet about that corridor for a long time afterward. But enough. On the steps of the Theed Palace, in the golden late afternoon light, Obi-Wan Kenobi looks at Anakin Skywalker with the expression of a man revising an opinion in real time. You did well up there, Obi-Wan said. Thank you. A pause. Obi-Wan has the particular Jedi quality of stillness that looks like composure and is actually just very disciplined discomfort. Qui-Gon wants you as his Padawan, he said. You'll be trained well. I know, Anakin said. Then, because it seems true and worth saying, you fought well in the generator room. Both of you. Obi-Wan blinks. It is a very small blink, but Anakin catches it. Yes, Obi-Wan said, after a moment. We did. The sun is finishing its descent over Theed's spires. Somewhere inside the palace, music is starting, the beginning of a celebration that will last 3 days, that will be remembered as the liberation of Naboo, that will mean different things to different people for a very long time. Anakin watches the light go and thinks about his mother, 1 level up, standing at a palace window watching the same sky. Whole. That is the word that arrives, quiet and certain, with no drama attached to it. For the first time in his life, nothing is missing. The Chancellor's office sits at the peak of the Senate Dome, above the traffic lanes and the noise, and the particular exhaustion of a city that never fully sleeps. From the curved viewport behind Palpatine's desk, Coruscant spreads in every direction like a circuit board lit from within, 1 trillion lives reduced, at this altitude to light and geometry. Anakin is 14 years old. He has been here 3 times before. Each time the office has felt slightly different. The first visit, at 9, fresh from Naboo, the room had seemed enormous, all dark wood and quiet authority, the kind of space that asked you to be smaller than you were. At 11, returning with Qui-Gon after a mission to the Mid-Rim, he had noticed the art on the walls for the first time. Collected pieces from a dozen cultures, each one chosen with the care of a man who understands that objects signal things about their owner. Today, at 14, he notices the Chancellor himself. Palpatine stands at the viewport, with his hands clasped behind his back. The posture is practiced, open, unthreatening. A man communing peacefully with the city he serves. He turns when Anakin enters, and his face arranges itself into warmth the way a skilled technician throws a switch. "Anakin," Palpatine said, "it is always a genuine pleasure." "Chancellor," Anakin crosses the room and takes the offered handshake. The man's grip is firm without being aggressive, calibrated, like everything else in this office. They sit. An aide brings tea that neither of them will drink. Outside, a freighter crosses the viewport at mid-distance, its running lights blinking a slow, indifferent rhythm. "I hear your last mission was a considerable success," Palpatine said. "The Serenian blockade, resolved without a single casualty on either side. Remarkable, for a Padawan of your age." "Qui-Gon did most of it," Anakin said. "I just followed the thread he handed me." Palpatine smiles. Modesty. The Council must be pleased. A brief pause, timed, Anakin notices, like a rest in a piece of music. Although I wonder sometimes whether the Council is capable of being genuinely pleased, or merely satisfied. Anakin looks at him. The line is casual, thrown out lightly, designed to land as a shared observation between equals, rather than what it actually is. An invitation. Anakin has heard this particular note before. Not from Palpatine specifically, from customers in Watto's shop who wanted you to agree with them about Watto before they made their real request. "They have high standards," Anakin said. Neutral, uninflected, Palpatine tilts his head a degree. "Of course. Of course they do." He lifts his tea, doesn't drink it, sets it down. "I only mean that an exceptional young man, one who has already demonstrated gifts that frankly exceed what I've seen from masters twice his age, deserves recognition that matches his actual ability, not recognition calibrated to institutional comfort." The freighter outside has cleared the viewport. The sky is empty glass. "I feel recognized," Anakin said. This is the third time Palpatine has run a variation of this sequence. Anakin has mapped it with the same methodical attention he brings to mechanical problems. The structure is always the same, open with genuine warmth, which is the most dangerous part because it is, in its way, real. The Chancellor does seem to enjoy his company. In the manner of a collector who has found something rare. Follow with a compliment large enough to create mild obligation. Then introduce a small wedge between Anakin and the Jedi, never direct enough to be offensive, always framed as concern. Then wait. The waiting is the tell. A man who is simply making conversation moves on when the conversation moves on. Palpatine waits, each time to see what the wedge produces. The first time at 11, Anakin hadn't recognized the structure. He had walked away from the meeting feeling vaguely uncomfortable without knowing why. The way you feel when a machine is making a sound slightly off from its normal frequency. He'd mentioned it to Qui-Gon that evening. Qui-Gon had gone very still in the way he went still when something required the full allocation of his attention. He asked Anakin to repeat what the Chancellor had said, word for word. Anakin did. Qui-Gon had sat with it for a moment, then said, quietly, that some people in positions of power understand that influence is built in increments, and that the appropriate response to incremental influence was patient, consistent clarity about who you are and what you value. Not suspicion, Qui-Gon had said. Suspicion makes you reactive. Clarity makes you stable. Anakin had thought about that for a long time. He still thinks about it. Palpatine accepts the deflection with the grace of a man who has been deflecting deflections for 40 years. Of course, he said again, and his smile recalibrates seamlessly into something warmer, less freighted. He asks about Shmi. He always asks about Shmi, and this, Anakin has decided, is either genuine or the most precisely chosen probe in the man's repertoire, because there is no topic more likely to generate unguarded response in a boy whose entire emotional history is organized around his mother. She's well, Anakin said. She's been working with the temple's agricultural staff. She likes the greenhouse levels. Remarkable woman, Palpatine said, and his tone carries something that sounds like admiration. To have raised a son like you, in those conditions, under that kind of... He pauses, choosing the word with visible care. Constraint. She's strong, Anakin said simply. She is. Palpatine sets down his tea and leans back slightly, and his expression shifts into something that looks like sincere reflection. The face of a man letting his guard down, sharing something real. I think about that sometimes, Anakin. The things the people we love carry. The helplessness of watching someone you care for bear weight you can't take from them. A beat. That particular fear. I imagine it never entirely disappears, even when the immediate situation resolves. Anakin looks at him steadily. The line is elegant. He'll give the Chancellor that. It is an attempt to locate a wound, to find residue of the old dread, the years of lying awake in the slave quarters calculating how to save her, and reactivate it as a live current rather than a scar. The implication nestled inside the sympathy: you saved her once, but you can't always save the people you love. And somewhere inside you, you know that. It is the right fear to reach for. It would have worked, Anakin thinks, on a version of himself that had gotten on the ship without her. I don't feel helpless, Anakin said. I haven't for a while. A silence. Palpatine's expression holds its warmth without flickering, which is itself impressive. The man has extraordinary control. But something behind the warmth adjusts. A recalculation, precise and invisible, conducted entirely behind the eyes. No, Palpatine said, after a moment. I don't suppose you do. He says it with what sounds like admiration, and perhaps some portion of it is. That is what makes you singular, my boy. Most men your age are still learning that fear is a companion, not a master. You seem to have arrived at that understanding earlier than most. Qui-Gon helped, Anakin said. The name lands the way it always does when Anakin drops it into these conversations. Palpatine's relationship with Qui-Gon Jinn is one of careful mutual respect and almost total opacity. Two men who understand each other precisely well enough to maintain a perfect cordial distance. Each time Anakin invokes his master in this office, the Chancellor absorbs it and moves on, but the adjustment behind his eyes is faster, tighter. Of course, Palpatine said. You've been fortunate in your master. I know. The meeting ends with warmth and handshakes and a standing invitation to return whenever Anakin wishes. The Chancellor's aide escorts him to the turbolift. The doors close. Alone in the descending car, Anakin lets out a slow breath through his nose and runs the conversation back from the beginning, cataloging each move the way he used to catalog the components of a broken engine. Identifying the function of each piece, noting what was missing, marking what didn't match its stated purpose. The Chancellor is not a bad man, necessarily. Anakin has not decided that. The galaxy is full of people who deploy warmth strategically, and still possess genuine warmth alongside the strategy. The two things are not mutually exclusive. But there is a shape to these meetings. A consistent, patient shape. And whatever the Chancellor is building, he is building it one visit at a time, with the quiet confidence of someone who has never failed to find a crack. The turbolift reaches the ground level. The doors open onto the Senate atrium. Noise, movement, the particular organized chaos of a functioning republic. Anakin steps out into it and straightens his Padawan robes and thinks about what to tell Qui-Gon tonight. Everything, he decides, the same as always. He walks toward the exit in the cool of the Coruscant afternoon, and behind him, 60 floors up, behind curved transparisteel, Sheev Palpatine stands at his viewport and watches the traffic lanes with his hands clasped at his back. Still, patient, thinking, Padmé Amidala's apartment on Coruscant occupies the upper floor of a residential tower in the Senate district, high enough that the traffic noise from below arrives as a low, continuous murmur rather than anything distinct. The rooms are spare for someone of her station, good furniture, a few carefully chosen objects, nothing excessive. The apartment of a woman who has decided that the work is the point, and everything else is logistics. Anakin has been here 4 times in the last 2 years. Each time, the visit has been framed as something else, a security briefing, a coincidental overlap of schedules, a message from Qui-Gon that happened to require in-person delivery. They are both aware that these framings are increasingly unconvincing. Neither of them has said so directly. He is 17. She is 22. The gap is real, and they both know it, and neither of them has found a way to make it irrelevant yet. which means what exists between them currently is a long, careful conversation that neither of them has officially started. Tonight she opens the door herself, which means she sent the aide home, which means this visit is different from the previous ones. "Come in," Padmé said. "I made tea. You didn't have to." "I know." She steps back to let him pass. "I wanted to." They sit across from each other at a low table near the viewport, and for a while the conversation runs on the comfortable rails they've laid down over 2 years. The political situation, the growing fractures in the Senate, the particular strain of watching a republic drift toward emergency measures, while the mechanisms designed to stop exactly that drift begin to give way. Padmé talks about legislation the way Anakin talks about engines, not as abstract systems but as things with real tolerances, real failure points, real consequences for specific people when they break. He has always liked that about her. The specificity, the refusal to let the scale of politics dissolve the individual human weight of what politics decides. "Palpatine is pushing for expanded emergency powers again," she said. Her cup is halfway to her mouth and stops there. Not overtly. He never does anything overtly. But the groundwork, the committee reassignments, the procedural adjustments, it adds up to the same destination. "I noticed." She looks at him over the cup. "You've been watching him. He's been watching me." Anakin keeps his voice even. "We've been watching each other for about 3 years." Padmé sets the cup down. Her expression shifts into the precise, focused attention she gives to things that require it. "Tell me," she said. So he does. He lays it out the same way he lays things out for Qui-Gon, linear, specific, without editorializing. The structure of the meetings, the wedge attempts, the consistent pattern of locating a wound and pressing, the way the Chancellor's recalibrations have become, over time, more exploratory and less confident, as if the man is solving a problem whose variables keep shifting. Padmé listens without interrupting. This is one of her skills, the capacity to receive information completely before responding, rather than loading the next thing she wants to say while the other person is still speaking. It makes conversation with her feel different from conversation with most people. More like being actually heard. "You've never told the Council," she said when he finishes. "I've told Qui-Gon. Every time." "And Qui-Gon's assessment?" "That a man in Palpatine's position accumulates influence by habit and doesn't necessarily have a specific target. That the appropriate response is clarity, not suspicion." He pauses. "I think Qui-Gon is right in principle and slightly optimistic in practice." Padmé is quiet for a moment. Outside, a Senate shuttle crosses the viewport, its blue running light steady against the dark. "I think," she said carefully, "that you are probably the least exploitable person he has ever decided to cultivate. And I think that is making him very patient and very frustrated in equal measure." Anakin looks at her. "That's what I think too." A silence settles between them. Not empty, the kind of silence that has content, that is full of the weight of the thing neither of them has officially named yet. Padmé breaks it. "Anakin," she said, quietly, in a register she doesn't use for political discussions. "What are we doing?" The question is precise. No hedging, no plausible deniability built into the phrasing. This is the same quality that makes her good at her work, and, apparently, at this. He doesn't look away. "I think you know what we're doing. I know what it feels like we're doing." She turns the cup in her hands without looking at it. "I also know the code. I know what asking you to. The code says attachment leads to fear of loss," Anakin said. "That fear of loss leads to possession. That possession leads to suffering." He keeps his voice level, because this matters and deserves precision. Those are real mechanisms. I've watched them work in real people. I'm not dismissing them. "But," she said, "but the mechanism starts with fear, not with love." He meets her eyes. "I freed my mother because I loved her, not because I was afraid of losing her. Because," he stops, finds the right phrasing, continues, "because love asked something of me and I did it. And then she was free, and I wasn't afraid anymore. The fear went with the helplessness. The love stayed." Padmé is very still. "I am not going to be afraid of losing you," Anakin said. "I am going to love you, and it is going to make me better at everything I do, and I will be completely honest with you. Always. About everything. Because honesty is the only thing that keeps love from curdling into the thing the code is actually warning against." The silence, after this, is different from the previous ones. Denser. Padmé sets the cup down with a soft click that is the only sound in the room. "That was very well argued," she said. "I've been thinking about it for about a year." Something shifts in her expression, the composed diplomat giving way, briefly and completely, to something younger and less armored. She laughs. It is a short, real sound, and it changes the entire temperature of the room. "A year," she said. 14 months roughly. She shakes her head slowly, but she is still smiling, and the smile is the unguarded kind. "You know this is complicated. The Council will know," Anakin said. "When the time is right. I'm not going to hide it." He pauses. "I don't hide things. You should know that about me going in." Padmé looks at him for a long time. Reading, assessing, the same focused attention she gives to legislation and Palpatine's procedural maneuvers. Applying it to him. "I know that about you," she said finally. "I've known it for 2 years. It's most of why," she stops. Begins again. "It's most of why I sent the aide home tonight." Later, when the city outside has cycled through its middle hours, and the traffic lanes have thinned to their overnight minimum, they sit side by side at the viewport with the low table behind them, and the conversation having moved through 3 more subjects and back. The way conversations do when 2 people have a great deal to say to each other and have been waiting to say it. Padmé has her legs folded under her and a datapad in her lap she has not looked at in 2 hours. Anakin has his back against the viewport frame and his eyes on the mid-distance, where a freighter is making its slow transit through the commercial lanes. "My mother is going to like you," he said. Padmé turns to look at him. "You've told her about me?" "Not specifically. She's observed enough." A pause. "She told me last week that I talk about politics differently than I used to. She wanted to know what changed." "What did you tell her?" "That I found someone who cares about it the way it deserves to be cared about." He glances over. She said that sounded like a Jedi way of not answering the question. Padmé's expression holds something warm and precise, and slightly complicated. "She sounds formidable," she said. "She built a hyperdrive-capable podracer with her 9-year-old son using parts that shouldn't have been compatible," Anakin said. Formidable is one word. Outside, the freighter completes its transit and disappears beyond the edge of the viewport. The traffic lane is empty. The city below continues its indifferent, luminous hum. Padmé reaches over and takes his hand. She doesn't say anything. Neither does he. The silence between them is the easy kind, the kind that arrives after 2 people have finished saying what they needed to say, and found, to no particular surprise, that it was enough. Geonosis at midday is the color of dried blood. The rock formations rise from the desert floor in jagged, wind-carved columns, and the heat comes off the surface in visible waves that make the horizon shimmer and dissolve. The arena sits in a natural bowl between 3 converging ridgelines, a structure that could pass for geological accident if you didn't know better, which means the Geonosians built it to look like something the planet made on its own. Anakin notices this from the prisoner's dock, and files it away. The detail feels important in a way he can't immediately justify. He is 19. His wrists are in mag cuffs. Padmé's chained beside him on a stone pillar 30 degrees to his right, and Obi-Wan is on a 3rd pillar behind them both. His Padawan braid gone now. His expression carrying the particular quality of a man conducting a rapid inventory of a very bad situation. The arena fills with sound. Geonosians in the upper tiers, a buzzing collective hum that rises and falls with the movement below. Count Dooku sits in an elevated box at the arena's north end, flanked by separatist leadership, his white hair sharp against the dusty air. He looks down at the 3 of them with the expression of a man observing an equation he has already solved. 3 execution beasts enter from the gates below. Anakin looks at them with the full, calm attention he gives to any mechanical problem. The Nexu first, quadrupedal, feline, built for short burst acceleration and the kind of clawing attack that shreds rather than stabs. The reek is mass and momentum, its head a battering ram. Its charge pattern predictable, if you understand that it will always lead with the left horn because the right shows where. The Acklay moves on 6 limbs with a gait that looks unstable and isn't, covering ground at a speed that the body doesn't initially predict. He runs the engagement geometry in the time it takes the crowd to finish its welcoming roar. The Acklay comes for Obi-Wan. The Nexu angles toward Padmé. The reek moves for him. Anakin snaps the mag cuff chain against the post at the weakest link point, the connection bracket, not the chain itself, and drops from the pillar the moment the cuffs give. He hits the sand in a controlled roll, comes up moving, and the reek's charge carries it past the pillar's base by 6 meters before it can turn. He is already behind it. The force lands in him clean and immediate, not a flood, not a rush, just a precise amplification of what he already knows. The way a good lens clarifies an image that was already there. He reaches out and takes hold of the reek's neural cluster at the base of its skull with a focused telekinetic grip. Not enough to harm it, enough to steer. The animal slows. Confused, its charge instinct fighting a signal it can't locate. Anakin walks alongside it, one hand extended, maintaining the contact, and in 11 seconds the reek has gone from execution beast to something closer to a very large, deeply uncertain mount. He takes hold of its horn and swings up onto its back in a single movement. The crowd goes quiet. Not silent. The Geonosian hum drops in pitch and volume, which is, he suspects, their version of stunned. He rides the reek across the arena floor at a controlled gallop, angling toward the Nexu. The creature has cornered Padmé against her pillar, its claws leaving grooves in the stone, a hand's width from her face. Anakin drives the reek in from its left flank, and the Nexu turns at the last moment. Too late. The impact carries it 12 meters across the sand. It rises, shakes itself, and then Anakin is on the ground again, the reek wheeling away, and he focuses the telekinetic grip on the Nexu's forelimbs, and locks them. The creature thrashes against nothing. Pinned. He holds it. Across the arena, Obi-Wan has acquired a weapon from a fallen guard, and is handling the Acklay with the kind of footwork that speaks to 20 years of training. Clean lines, minimum movement, every step deliberate. The Acklay's 6th limb catches him across the left shoulder, and he goes down to one knee, recovers as up again before the limb returns. Anakin releases the Nexu. It scrambles away from him, wanting nothing further to do with whatever he is, and covers the distance to Obi-Wan at a run. A guard spear from the sand, caught one-handed without breaking stride, and he drives it into the joint where the Acklay's 3rd and 4th limbs connect on its right side. The animal lurches. Off balance now, compensating, its attack pattern disrupted. Obi-Wan drives it back. Between them, it has nowhere to go. It retreats. The gate guard closes. The beast is done. In the elevated box, Dooku has not moved. He watches with the focused stillness of a chess player who has just seen an unexpected response to a gambit he has used for 30 years. The Jedi arrive the way they always arrive, at the exact moment that transforms a public execution into something else entirely. 150 ignited lightsabers in the arena's shadows, stepping forward into the light simultaneously. A wall of color that redraws the geometry of the situation in a single breath. Mace Windu stands in the box behind Dooku's shoulder, with his blade at the Separatist leader's throat. "This party's over," Windu said. "The battle begins. It is not clean. Battles of this scale are never clean. The gap between the principle of a Jedi engagement and the reality of 200 combatants in an enclosed space. With Geonosian warriors launching from the upper tiers and destroyer droids rolling in through the lower gates, is the gap between a blueprint and a building. Anakin moves through it on pure synthesis, the Force reading vectors, his body responding before the cognition catches up, the whole system running at a speed that feels, from the inside, almost leisurely. He has a lightsaber now, recovered from a fallen combatant during the first 30 seconds. He doesn't think about it consciously. The grip is just right. The blade angle self-correcting, the extension of his arm into the weapon total and immediate. 3 destroyer droids in formation, rolling to unfurl. He reads the timing of the unfurl and moves inside the moment before it completes. The shields aren't fully up. The blasters haven't locked, and he has already passed them with 2 of the 3 disabled before the 3rd can acquire a target. He doesn't stop. Padmé's in a clone gunship now, directing fire from the upper turret with the same precision she brings to Senate procedure, identifying targets in order of threat, adjusting as conditions change, staying forward in her mind rather than reacting backward. He catches her eye across the arena floor for a fraction of a second, and something passes between them that doesn't require language. The droids are falling back. The Geonosians are retreating to the tunnels. The arena, which was designed to produce a specific outcome, has produced a different one. The gunships take the survivors into the desert beyond the arena bowl, where the clone army has engaged Dooku's ground forces across a 3-kilometer front. From above, it looks like 2 weather systems colliding, organized, impersonal, each side operating on its own internal logic until the logics intersect and produce violence. Dooku is running. Anakin knows this the way he sometimes knows things. Not through intelligence or deduction, but through the specific texture of the Force, when a situation has an answer that hasn't been found yet. The battle in the arena was a sacrifice. The Separatist leadership is already gone. Dooku never planned to stay. He's going to the hangar, Anakin said. The one in the rock formation, northeast of the arena. 20 minutes, maybe less. Obi-Wan looks at him from across the gunship. His left shoulder is field-dressed, the Bacta patch already doing its work. How confident? Enough to go. Dooku moves through the cave hangar with the unhurried grace of a man who has already decided how this ends. His solar sailor sits on the launch pad. Systems warm. Ready. He turns when they enter. His expression is not surprise. It is the adjustment of a prepared man noting that the situation has followed one of several anticipated tracks rather than another. Brave, Dooku said, but unwise. You're still a Padawan. Technically, Anakin said. He closes the distance before Dooku can establish the engagement on his own terms. No opening exchange, no ritual verbal sparring. Just direct forward pressure that forces the older man to respond rather than initiate. Dooku is fast, genuinely fast, with the economy of someone trained in the old way, every movement containing exactly as much force as it needs, and not a fraction more. Anakin absorbs the first 3 exchanges and reads the pattern underneath. Dooku leads with a high attack to open the shoulder. He favors a pivot disengage when pressed. His footwork shifts right under pressure, and he knows it. Compensates, which means the compensation is the tell. The 4th exchange, Anakin goes left. The blade scores across Dooku's right arm, not disabling, but real. First contact. Dooku steps back. For the first time, something crosses his face that is not performance. Then the Force lightning comes, both hands. Full power, the air between them turning white, and Anakin absorbs it. Not deflects. Absorbs. His hand comes up and the lightning hits his palm and stops there, crackling against his skin, and for a moment the cave is lit entirely by that cold white light. The effort is immense. He feels it in his teeth, in the backs of his eyes. Every cell in his body conducting something it was not designed to conduct. He holds it for 3 full seconds. Then he releases it back, compressed, focused into a single directed beam that carries twice the charge it arrived with. Dooku moves aside in time. Barely, the beam takes out a section of the cave wall behind him in an explosion of orange rock. Dooku looks at him. His composure has not broken, but its surface has changed. Remarkable, Dooku said quietly. And unlike everything else the man has said in this room, that word sounds true. Obi-Wan moves in from the left flank. 2-on-1, Dooku retreating toward the ramp. The sailor's engines are spinning up, automated launch sequence running without him. He cannot fight both of them and reach the ship. He throws a section of cave ceiling between them and the ramp. By the time the dust settles, the hangar is empty, and the sailor's engine note is already fading into the Geonosian sky. Anakin looks at the settling dust and the empty launch pad. His right hand is still faintly burning from the lightning. He'll run to Sidious, Obi-Wan said. Yes. Anakin opens and closes the hand slowly, testing the feeling. Good. Obi-Wan looks at him sideways. If he runs to Sidious, Anakin said, then we know Sidious is real, and we know Dooku is the thread that leads there. The hangar is quiet around them. Somewhere above, the battle is still running its course, But in here there is only dust and the smell of ion exhaust and the clean, spare clarity of a conclusion that is also a beginning. Obi-Wan is quiet for a moment. You've been thinking about this for a while. Since the Chancellor's office, Anakin said. Third visit. Obi-Wan absorbs this without expression, which is its own expression. Together they walk back toward the light. The Republic detention block on Coruscant occupies the lower levels of a building that has no official name on any public registry. The entrance is a service corridor off a maintenance tunnel in the Senate District's infrastructure grid, the kind of place that exists by not being looked at. 3 security checkpoints to reach the cell block. 2 more to reach the cell itself. Anakin has been here once before, on a different matter. He remembers the smell, recycled air with a mineral undertone, like water that has passed through too many filters. The lighting is the flat, even kind that removes shadows and, with them, any sense of time. Count Dooku sits in the cell's single chair, with his hands resting on the table and his posture carrying the composed uprightness of a man at a formal dinner rather than a prisoner in Republic custody. His robes are the ones he was captured in, dusty from the Geonosian desert, one sleeve showing the burn mark from Anakin's blade. He has not asked for replacements. The detail is deliberate. Dooku controls what he can. Always. Anakin enters alone. Mace Windu had objected to this. The objection was reasonable. Dooku was a Sith Lord, a former Jedi Master, a man who had been responsible for the deaths of Jedi he had once called colleagues. Sending a 19-year-old Padawan in without a senior present was the kind of decision that required justification. Anakin's justification was simple. Dooku had said something in the cave hangar. Not the words, the space underneath them. Remarkable, a man like Dooku only says that word when he means it, and a man like Dooku only means it when his model of the situation has encountered something his model didn't contain. That gap, between what Dooku expected and what Anakin had shown him, was the only leverage they had, and leverage of that kind worked best one-on-one, without witnesses reframing the dynamic. Windu had looked at him for a long time, and then stepped aside. Dooku watches Anakin take the seat across the table. His expression holds its composure, but his eyes are doing something more active. Reading. Cataloging. Adjusting the same way they adjusted in the hangar when the lightning stopped. No recorder, Dooku observed. Nothing you say here is going to be used in a tribunal, Anakin said. This isn't that kind of conversation. What kind of conversation is it? The kind where I ask you something and you decide whether answering serves your interests. Dooku is quiet for a moment. His hands remain still on the table, a deliberate stillness, the practiced physical self-control of someone who learned early that the body broadcasts what the mind tries to conceal. You absorbed my lightning, Dooku said. Yes, that technique is not in any Jedi archive. It's not in any Sith archive I've encountered either. A pause. Where did you learn it? I didn't, Anakin said. I figured out that it should be possible, and then I did it. The silence that follows is the kind that has texture. Dooku's eyes move across Anakin's face with the precise, unhurried attention of a man reading a document in a language he mostly knows. The prophecy, Dooku said. Not a question. Maybe. I don't think about it much. No, Dooku said slowly. I don't suppose you do. He leans back a degree, the first movement he's made since Anakin sat down. What do you want to know? Tell me about Sidious. The name lands in the room and sits there. Dooku's expression doesn't change in any obvious way, but the quality of his stillness shifts, becomes more intentional, more load-bearing. Darth Sidious, Dooku said, is the most patient man I have ever encountered. He thinks in decades. His plans do not have contingencies. His plans are made entirely of contingencies, layered so that any outcome feeds the next stage. A pause. He has been preparing the fall of the Republic since before you were born. How? Both sides of the war. Dooku says it without inflection. The Separatists are his. The Republic Senate has been his for 30 years. The Clone Army. He stops. The Clone Army, Anakin said. Dooku looks at him. Something crosses his face that is not quite guilt and not quite satisfaction. the expression of a man who has made decisions he understood the cost of at the time and is now watching that cost arrive. "The inhibitor chips," Dooku said. The words are quiet. Measured, he sets them on the table between them the way you set down something that cannot be picked back up. Anakin goes very still. Every clone soldier in the Grand Army of the Republic has a biochip implanted during the growth process. Dooku continued. Neural, targeted to a specific set of command protocols. The chips will not activate on their own. They require a trigger order. When that order comes, every clone in the field will execute it simultaneously, without override, without deviation. He meets Anakin's eyes. The order is designated Order 66. Its function is the elimination of the Jedi. The cell is very quiet. The recycled air moves through its filters. The flat lighting hums at a frequency slightly below conscious hearing. Somewhere beyond the block's walls, the detention facility goes about its business. Anakin sits with what he has just been told and does not move. He processes it the way he processes mechanical problems, not resisting the shape of it, not requiring it to be something other than what it is, just taking it in and letting the implications chain outward at their own pace. The Clone Army. 200,000 soldiers across the Outer Rim, fighting alongside Jedi commanders who trust them completely. Every one of them carrying a switch. "Why are you telling me this?" Anakin said. "It is not a challenge. It is a real question." Dooku considers it as a real question. "Because I am not, in the end, what Sidious made me," Dooku said. He says it without sentiment, declarative, precise, the tone of a man filing a correction to the record rather than making an emotional appeal. "I believed in what the separatist movement was supposed to be, a genuine counterweight to a Senate so corrupt it had become incapable of self-correction. That belief was real. Sidious provided the mechanism, and I provided the legitimacy, and I told myself those were separable things." A pause. "They were not." Anakin looks at him. "You are not here to be manipulated," Dooku said. "I am aware of that. The Chancellor has been trying to find your edge for years, I know, because he told me, with some frustration, that you are uniquely resistant to the techniques that work on men with something to fear. Something that might be dry appreciation moves through his expression. I am not attempting what he has failed at. I am telling you about the chips because the chips are real, and if Sidious reaches his endgame with them still active, every Jedi you know will die in the field with a clone's blaster at their back. The stillness in Anakin's chest is absolute. "Where are they implanted?" he said. "Base of the cerebral cortex. Growth stage insertion. They cannot be removed surgically without killing the host." He pauses. "But they can be disabled." Sidious architected the program through the Kaminoan cloners. The chip specifications, the trigger frequency encryption, the growth stage insertion protocols, all of it will be documented in the Kaminoan data systems with the thoroughness that species brings to everything they build. If you can access those records and construct a targeted virus, it could overwrite the trigger protocol across the entire army simultaneously. The chips would remain physically in place but would be functionally inert. Anakin is quiet for a long time. Dooku watches him think with the expression of a man watching a calculation he cannot follow, but can recognize as genuine. "You could have told the Council this at any point in the last 10 years, Anakin said. "Yes, why now?" "Because the war is 6 months old and Sidious is accelerating his timeline, and because," Dooku stops. His hands on the table shift, the first uncontrolled movement he has made. "Because I watched you absorb Force lightning and send it back, and I understood, for the first time, that the variable Sidious has not accounted for might actually be sufficient." He says it flat, stripped of drama. "I have been wrong about many things. I am not wrong about that." Anakin stands. He stands without hurry, the way you stand when the conversation has reached its conclusion and the next thing is already forming in your mind. "Is there anything else?" he said. Dooku looks up at him. In the flat, shadowless light of the cell, he looks older than he did in the hangar, not diminished, but uncloaked. The performance of separatist gravitas gone, leaving something more specific and more tired. "One thing," Dooku said. "When you find Sidious, and you will find him, do not give him time to speak. He will find something, even with you. A pause. He has been doing this for a very long time. Anakin holds his gaze for a moment, then nods once, which is the only acknowledgement Dooku is going to get. He walks to the cell door, and the guard lets him out, and the door seals behind him with a sound like a period at the end of a very long sentence. In the corridor, he stands still for a moment with the information settling into its proper configuration. The clone army, the chips, the timer running somewhere beneath the surface of the war they thought they were fighting. He starts walking. There is a great deal to do, and very little of it can wait. Kamino exists at the edge of the map in every sense that matters. The planet sits alone in a remote system, coordinates struck from the Jedi archives a decade ago by a man who knew exactly what he was hiding, and why. From orbit, it looks like a single unbroken ocean. No landmass, no variation. Just gray-green water under perpetual storm cover, the cloud systems moving in slow continental rotations that never fully clear. The cloning facility rises from the surface on stilts that vanish into the water below the waveline. From the landing platform, the view in every direction is identical. Horizon, cloud, the white-capped churn of an ocean that has never seen a coastline. The wind off the water carries salt and cold, and the particular smell of a place that exists entirely outside normal categories. Anakin steps off the transport with Rex at his shoulder, and a cover story that will survive approximately 48 hours of scrutiny. Supply inspection. Authorized by the Office of the Supreme Chancellor's Military Liaison. The documentation is real. Padmé had sourced it through a Senate Oversight Committee she chairs, legitimately issued, technically accurate in every particular. They are here to inspect supply chains. The supply chain they are actually inspecting is not on the manifest. Rex walks beside him with the easy authority of a captain who has been everywhere and needed to look like he belonged in all of it. He has known for 6 hours what they are actually here to do. He had listened to the full briefing, the chips, Dooku's testimony, the trigger protocol, with his hands folded on the table and his expression moving through a sequence Anakin had watched carefully. Comprehension, then a very controlled stillness, then something that landed in the space between anger and grief before being filed away behind the professional exterior. Then Rex had said, "Tell me what you need." 4 words. No hesitation. The facility's data network runs through a central processing hub on the facility's 3rd sublevel, below the growth chambers, below the training simulators, in a part of the building the tour route doesn't include. The Kaminoan Prime Minister, a tall, pale creature named Lama Su, had given them a thorough tour of everything above ground level, his manner impeccably courteous and entirely opaque. Kaminoans, Anakin has decided, are the galaxy's most accomplished practitioners of a particular kind of hospitality, comprehensive, gracious, and perfectly sealed. They are shown the growth chambers, the training facilities, the clone barracks, where 10,000 men at various stages of accelerated development move through their programmed routines with a precision that is either impressive or disturbing, depending on what you know about the chips sitting at the base of each of their skulls. Anakin keeps his expression neutral and his mind focused. At the 4th hour of the tour, Rex develops a problem with his armor's environmental regulator, a genuine-sounding mechanical complaint that requires a maintenance bay and a technician and, critically, a Kaminoan escort with access to the service levels. Anakin volunteers to find the facility's manager and is directed, helpfully, toward the administrative corridor on sublevel 2. He goes to sublevel 3 instead. The data hub smells of cold metal and ozone, the specific atmosphere of a room full of active processing units running at high load. The lighting is blue-white and sourceless, emanating from panels in the ceiling and walls with the even directionless quality of the detention block on Coruscant. No shadows anywhere. He has 12 minutes before Rex's maintenance cover expires. The central terminal takes 40 seconds to access. The security layer is military grade, but structured around the assumption that intruders would come with slicing tools and brute force algorithms. Anakin doesn't do either. He finds the administrative override port, the one that exists in every system for emergency maintenance access, and uses a Kaminoan technician's clearance code that Padmé's committee work had surfaced in a routine procurement document 3 weeks ago. The system opens like a door that was never fully locked. He finds the chip specification files in a directory labeled with a long numerical string that means nothing to anyone who doesn't know what they're looking for. The files are exactly what Dooku described: complete neural interface specifications, trigger frequency encryption, growth stage insertion protocols documented with the meticulous thoroughness of a species that considers precision a moral value. He finds the trigger protocol on the 14th page of the primary specification file. It is a single encrypted signal. One frequency, one encryption key, broadcast capable through the standard Republic military communications network. If the signal reaches any clone within range, the chip activates within seconds. No override, no delay, no exception. The virus needs to do one thing: overwrite the decryption key stored in each chip's receiver with a string of corrupted data. The chip stays in place, the hardware stays active, but the trigger signal will arrive and find nothing to unlock. The weapon remains, loaded, carried, but permanently unable to fire. Anakin opens the virus construction tool, a piece of software Padmé had sourced from a Republic intelligence contact who owed her a favor and had been told nothing about what it was for, and begins. This is the work he is good at, not the dramatic work, the other kind. The 9-year-old in Watto's shop at 2 a.m, with a pit droid logic circuit and a power cell, finding the exact wire, holding the breath. The same stillness, the same precision. The Force present not as power, but as a quality of attention. A narrowing of everything down to the task in front of him and the correct next move. He builds the virus in 7 minutes. It takes 4 minutes to deploy, propagating through the facility's network to the growth stage insertion records, from there to the active chip registry. From there broadcasting through the standard military medical update channel that pushes routine biological monitoring data to every chip in the Grand Army on a 48-hour cycle. The channel is automated. The update goes out as scheduled. The virus rides it. He closes the terminal, replaces the clearance code with its original parameters, and removes every trace of the session from the access log with the same methodical attention he used to restore Watto's ledger slate to exactly how he found it. He is in the administrative corridor on Sublevel 2 when a Kaminoan facility manager rounds the corner. "Ah," the manager said, pausing, "you were looking for the maintenance facilities?" "Found them," Anakin said. "Thank you." Rex is waiting for him at the landing platform. The maintenance technician has gone. The environmental regulator issue, apparently, resolved itself. They walk to the transport without speaking. The wind off the ocean hits them at the platform's edge, cold and salt-heavy, carrying the low, constant sound of water far below. The transport's ramp closes behind them. The pilot, a clone from a different battalion, runs the pre-flight sequence without looking back. Kamino falls away beneath them, white facility on stilts in infinite gray water, then cloud cover swallowing it, then nothing but the upper atmosphere and stars. Rex sits across from him in the passenger compartment with his helmet resting on his knee, looking at the floor between his boots with an expression that has been through several iterations since the briefing 6 hours ago, and has arrived somewhere Anakin cannot quite read. "It's done," Rex said. "As of about 40 minutes ago, the update will complete its cycle across the full army in the next 30 hours. Rex is quiet. "They don't know," Anakin said. "Any of them. They never knew the chips were there in any meaningful sense. The inhibitor function was kept out of all standard medical briefings." He pauses. "They'll never know this happened either, unless we tell them. Are we going to tell them?" Anakin thinks about 10,000 men in the barracks below, moving through their routines. The accelerated lives. The abbreviated childhoods compressed into growth tank years. The genuine bonds they form with their Jedi commanders. The genuine loyalty, the genuine courage. None of it manufactured. All of it real, sitting on top of a mechanism that would have ended it all in a single broadcast. "Not yet," Anakin said. "When the war is over. When there's time to do it properly." Rex absorbs this. He turns his helmet over in his hands. A slow, deliberate rotation. The way you handle something familiar when you need your hands to be doing something while your mind works. "You know what it means," Rex said. If someone had transmitted that order, what we would have? He stops. I know, we wouldn't have known we were doing it. That's the part I. He stops again. Sets the helmet on the seat beside him. I know, Anakin said again. Quietly, without qualification. Rex looks out the viewport at the stars for a long time. His profile in the transport's low light is steady, the trained composure holding, doing its job, but not quite covering the thing underneath. Thank you, Rex said finally. The word is simple, insufficient, by any reasonable measure, for what it is trying to carry. Rex seems to know this, he says it anyway, because it is what he has, and because some debts require acknowledgement even when the acknowledgement is inadequate. Anakin nods once. Outside, the stars hold their positions, indifferent and permanent, the same in every direction from this distance. The transport runs on through the dark. The nightmare arrives at the third hour. Not gradually, not the slow build of an ordinary dream darkening at its edges. It arrives complete, the way a door thrown open arrives, Padmé on a medical table, her face the color of the sheets beneath her, machines working at the edges of the frame with the efficient, indifferent activity of systems that have already decided the outcome. Her hands at her sides, her chest barely moving. Anakin wakes with his hand extended toward nothing. He sits in the dark of their quarters and breathes and lets the image recede at whatever pace it needs to recede. The room assembles itself around him in the familiar order, the viewport on the east wall. Coruscant's nighttime light grid, painting everything in amber and blue. The low table with Padmé's datapads in their usual stack. Her robe on the chair where she always leaves it. He looks at her. She is asleep beside him, her breathing steady, her expression carrying the unguarded quality that sleep gives people, regardless of how composed they are awake. Her hair is loose. Her right hand is open on the pillow between them. Alive, present, warm, he sits with the gap between what the dream showed him and what the room contains, and he does not reach for the fear. The fear is available. He can feel it, the way you can feel a bruise without pressing it. He simply does not press. He gets up instead. The kitchen is small. He makes tea by the light from the viewport, moving quietly, the familiar sequence of small actions, water, heat, the particular ceramic cup she prefers, settling something in his nervous system that the dream had disturbed. Practical tasks have always done this. His hands have always known how to think. He is still holding the cup when Padmé appears in the doorway. She reads his face the way she reads legislation, quickly, without performance, identifying the operative clause. Tell me, she said. So he does. At the low table, with the city outside doing its indifferent overnight business, he describes the dream in exact detail. The medical table, the machines, the specific quality of the light in the room, the way her hands looked. He describes the feeling underneath it, which was not grief in the dream but certainty, the specific texture of something that has already happened rather than something that might. Padmé listens without interrupting. Her hands are around her own cup. Her face is still. When he finishes, she is quiet for a moment. How clear was it, she said. Completely, and you woke reaching toward it. Yes. She sets her cup down with the careful precision she uses when she is organizing her thinking. Anakin, you know what clear, complete visions with that specific texture mean in force sensitivity literature. Prophetic possibility. Yes, so we go to the healers in the morning. She says it simply, as if it is the obvious next step, because for her, it is. Full workup, everything. If there's a medical basis for this, anything at all in my current health picture that would produce this outcome, we find it, and we address it. He looks at her across the table. This is what he had been afraid of telling her. He realizes, not her fear, but her competence. The way she would immediately convert the nightmare into a problem with actionable steps. He had been carrying it alone for the 20 minutes since he woke, and in the carrying had let it take on a weight that her first 3 sentences have already begun to reduce. There's something else, he said. She waits. The vision didn't feel like mine. He finds the right words carefully. Force visions have there's a quality to them. A texture. Like the difference between a memory and a dream. Your own Force impressions feel a certain way. He pauses. This felt like something placed. From outside. Padmé is very still. Like a transmission, she said. Like a transmission. Qui-Gon's quarters in the temple are spare to the point of austerity, a sleep mat, a meditation cushion, 2 shelves of physical books, a small window looking north. He has never accumulated things. Anakin has always thought this is less about Jedi detachment and more about a genuine preference for space to think. He opens the door at the second knock, which means he was awake, which means the Force told him something was coming. He listens to the full account without interrupting. When Anakin finishes, Qui-Gon sits with it for a long moment, not processing. Exactly. More like letting it settle at its own level. Sit down, Qui-Gon said. Both of you. The meditation is not like the standard Jedi exercises. Qui-Gon guides it differently. Looser. More interested in the edges of experience than the center, the peripheral information rather than the focal point. He asks Anakin to hold the dream, without entering it, to observe its surface from a distance, the way you observe water for what's moving underneath, rather than what's on top. Anakin holds it. And there, in the quality of the light in the dream, in the specific frequency of the emotional register underneath it, in a subtle wrongness he couldn't have named while inside the image, but can feel clearly from this distance, there is a seam. The vision has a join. An edge where something was attached to something else. 2 textures meeting that don't originate from the same source. His own Force sensitivity at the dream's edges, carrying the genuine biological fear response of a man watching someone he loves in danger. And beneath that, older, colder, deliberate, something that was never his. He opens his eyes. It was constructed, Anakin said. Qui-Gon nods once. Yes, that requires. Anakin stops, works through it. That requires proximity. Or a sustained connection built over time. Someone who has had access. Or both, Qui-Gon said. The 3 of them sit with the implication. The Chancellor's office. 63 visits across 6 years. A man who has spent those years conducting a patient, methodical search for a crack that was never there, for the original wound around Shmi that had healed at the root, for a fear of loss that never calcified into the thing he needed it to be. A brilliant strategist facing an opponent with no exploitable organic weakness, who manufactured one instead. He couldn't find the fear, Anakin said, not a question. Working it aloud. So he tried to create it. Give me a wound to fear losing Padmé the way I never feared losing my mother, because with my mother I acted, and the fear went with the helplessness. But if Padmé's death feels inevitable, Padmé said quietly, prophetically certain, beyond the reach of action. She says it with the same analytical precision she brings to everything, examining it as a mechanism, not flinching from the design of it. Then action doesn't dissolve the fear. Nothing dissolves it. It just grows. And a growing fear of loss, Anakin said, needs someone to offer control over the uncontrollable, which is the only thing he has ever actually been selling, Qui-Gon said. The stillness in the room afterward is complete. Not shock, none of them are shocked. Precisely, shock requires a gap between expectation and reality, and the reality, laid out in its full shape, fits too cleanly with everything they already know. It is more like the feeling of a calculation completing. The last variable resolving. Anakin looks at Padmé. She is sitting with her hands folded in her lap and her expression carrying the focused, forward-leaning quality it gets when she has finished analyzing something and is ready to act on the analysis. Her eyes are steady. She is not frightened. She is, if anything, precise. He miscalculated, she said. He's been miscalculating since the first meeting, Anakin said. He just didn't know it. Now he does. Qui-Gon folds his hands, which means his patience is exhausted and his timeline is no longer his to control. Anakin stands. The decision has been forming since the meditation ended, and it is fully formed now, clean-edged, without ambiguity. The kind of decision that arrives when all the prior work has been done correctly, and the conclusion is simply the last step of a calculation that was always going to end here. We take it to the Council, Anakin said. Everything. Dooku's testimony, the chip operation, the vision and its source, the full account. They'll want to move on it immediately, Qui-Gon said. Yes, Anakin looks at him. So will I. Padmé stands beside him. She takes his hand once, a brief, firm grip, the kind that means something specific, and releases it. Outside, Coruscant is beginning its transition from night to day, the artificial dawn cycling through the traffic management systems, the city's 10 trillion lights shifting their balance from the amber of working hours, ended to the pale gray of working hours beginning. Anakin watches it for a moment. Somewhere across the city, in an office at the peak of the Senate Dome, a very patient man has just run out of moves. He finds when he examines the feeling carefully that he is not angry, he is ready. The council receives the full account in silence, not the silence of disbelief, the silence of 12 masters absorbing information that confirms a shape they have been circling for years without being able to name it. Dooku's testimony, the inhibitor chips and their neutralization, the manufactured vision and its psychic fingerprint. The 63 meetings across 6 years, and the patient, escalating architecture of manipulation that ran beneath them. Mace Windu sits through all of it without moving. His expression does what it always does, holds its surface, but his eyes are doing something different by the end. Something that has moved past strategic assessment into the territory of reckoning. Yoda listens with his eyes closed. He does not open them until Anakin finishes. Known. Something was wrong, I have, Yoda said quietly. For many years. The dark side clouds everything. Clouds the shape of the cloud itself. He opens his eyes. But named, now it is. Named, clearly. The evidence is sufficient, Mace Windu said. His voice has the quality of a door being closed on a long and unpleasant deliberation. More than sufficient. We move today. They go for. The choice is deliberate, a mirror of what the confrontation would have looked like in a darker version of this day, in a timeline where the evidence was thinner and the approach more desperate. Here the evidence is documented, witnessed, cross-referenced. Here the 4 Jedi walking through the Senate district in the late afternoon light are not rushing toward a crisis, but concluding an investigation. Qui-Gon walks on Anakin's left, Obi-Wan on his right. Mace Windu 2 steps ahead, his posture carrying the contained forward energy of a man who has waited a long time for a specific moment, and is now moving toward it with the patience of someone who knows it cannot be rushed even now. The Senate Dome's external surface catches the afternoon sun and throws it back in long horizontal panels. The building that has been the Republic's face for 1,000 years looks exactly as it always looks, permanent, authoritative, indifferent to what is about to happen inside it. Anakin has been inside this building 47 times. He counts this one differently. The Chancellor's office. The curved viewport. The city spreading in every direction in the late amber light. 1 trillion lives reduced to geometry and glow. Palpatine stands at the viewport when they enter. His posture is the familiar one, hands clasped at the back, the pose of a man communing with the city he serves. He turns at the sound of the door, and his face arranges itself into the warmth that Anakin has spent 6 years watching deploy like a technical instrument. Then he sees all 4 of them. The warmth doesn't leave his face. It does something more interesting. It remains in place while everything behind it undergoes a rapid, total recalibration that happens entirely below the surface and takes less than 2 seconds. Masters, Palpatine said. Anakin, this is unexpected. We have evidence, Mace Windu said, that you are Darth Sidious. The office is very quiet. Outside, a Senate transport moves through the traffic lane at mid-distance, its running lights beginning to show in the early dusk. An ordinary piece of the ordinary city going about its ordinary business, entirely unaware of the room it is passing. Palpatine looks at each of them in sequence. His expression has not changed. This is, Anakin thinks, the most frightening thing about him. Not the power, not the decades of patient architecture, but the absolute steadiness of a man who has rehearsed losing for long enough that losing looks, from the outside, exactly like winning. That is a serious accusation, Palpatine said. It is a documented conclusion, Windu replied. The stillness holds for 3 more seconds. Then Palpatine moves. Not toward them. Away. A single backward step that puts the desk between him and the 4 Jedi. And in the same motion his posture changes completely. The diplomatic composure goes like a coat shrugged off. What replaces it is older and colder and has never, in all the years Anakin has sat across from this man, been visible before. A lightsaber appears from within his robes. A crimson blade. The hiss of ignition fills the room. "Very well," Sidious said. His voice has changed. Not dramatically, it is still his voice, still the precise, measured instrument it has always been. But the register has dropped, and the quality has altered. The warmth gone entirely. Something that has been performing warmth for 40 years finally setting the performance down. He moves like nothing Anakin has ever seen. The blade catches Mace Windu's guard in the opening second, and the force behind it is enormous. Not elegant. Not the refined precision of Dooku's style, but overwhelming. The power of someone who has spent decades not needing to hide what they are. Windu absorbs it and holds. Barely, Qui-Gon moves for the flanking angle. The blade tracks him without the main body turning, a physical impossibility by normal human reflex, which means the Force is doing the targeting, which means they are dealing with a sensitivity that makes every previous benchmark irrelevant. Obi-Wan takes the 3rd angle. Anakin does not take an angle. He watches. For 4 seconds, which is a long time in a room where 3 Jedi Masters are fully engaged. He stands and watches and reads the pattern underneath the movement the same way he read the Reek's charge geometry in the Geonosis arena. Not the surface. The structure, beneath. The surface. Sidious fights in 2 simultaneous tracks. His body manages 1 engagement. The Force manages a second, operating on a channel that his physical movements are designed to obscure, a misdirection built into the style itself, so that opponents who watch the blade miss the Force pressure coming from another direction. It is extraordinarily effective against opponents reading the blade. Anakin is not reading the blade. He steps into the engagement at the 4-second mark, between the arc of the blade and the Force pressure it is concealing, and Sidious registers the intrusion half a second late, which is the first time in this fight that anything has been late. The duel moves through the office in the way that fights between genuinely capable combatants always move. Not the clean geometry of training room exercises, but the compressed, space-eating controlled chaos of people using everything available. The desk goes. 2 of the viewport panels crack from force pressure. A section of the ceiling comes down in the 2nd minute when Windu and Sidious exchange a force push that neither fully absorbs. Sidious nearly kills Qui-Gon in the 3rd minute. It is a blade angle that comes from a direction the Force concealment has been building toward for 90 seconds. A long, patient setup that Anakin sees assembling, but cannot intercept in time. Qui-Gon deflects it. The blade scores across his left side, deep enough to matter, and he goes to 1 knee. The room goes 2-on-1 for 6 seconds. 6 seconds is enough for Sidious to begin to tip the balance. Even against Windu and Obi-Wan simultaneously, even cornered, the power is sufficient. The Force lightning comes from both hands, splitting the arc between 2 targets, and both of them are driven back. Anakin steps between them and the lightning and lets it hit him. The same as Geonosis. The same held breath, the same full-body conductance, the same feeling of every cell taking a charge it was not designed for. He holds it for 2 seconds this time, not 3. The source is significantly more powerful than Dooku's. He compresses it and releases it back. Sidious moves. Faster than Dooku. The beam takes the viewport behind him, and the transparasteel goes outward in a shower that falls 60 floors toward the Senate Plaza below. Cold air floods the room. Wind at this altitude. The city noise coming in for the first time. The actual sound of the Republic, indifferent and alive, pouring through the gap where the window was. Sidious stands with his back to the open air, his blade still active. And for the first time since the performance ended, his face shows something unscripted. Not fear, something adjacent to it, the expression of a man who has run every remaining line of the calculation and found the same answer at the end of each one. He looks at Anakin. "You could have everything," Sidious said. The voice is lower now, stripped of the performance, but still precise. Still the instrument it has always been, aimed with everything he has left. Power beyond the Jedi's comprehension. The ability to protect everyone you love from every threat. Everything I have built, it could be yours. Every resource, every contingency, every mechanism of control across the entire Republic. A pause, perfectly timed even now. I can save the ones you love. Anakin looks at him. The offer sits in the cold wind coming through the broken viewport, and he examines it the way he has examined everything this man has ever said to him, identifying the function of each part, noting what is missing, marking what doesn't match its stated purpose. What is missing is simple. What has always been missing. The offer requires a wound to enter through, and there is no wound. He freed his mother at 9 years old with a pit droid circuit and a held breath. He chose Padmé honestly and told her everything, and told the Council the same. He disarmed 200,000 hidden weapons with a slicing virus on a rain-swept platform at the edge of the map. Every fear this man has spent a decade trying to manufacture or locate or counterfeit has met the same answer. Not courage, exactly, not defiance, just the simple unavailability of the crack he needed. I already saved my mother, Anakin said. Quiet, absolute, the voice of someone stating a fact about the weather. I already saved my wife. You have nothing left to offer me. Sidious's face does something that none of the performance could have produced. Then the rage comes. Not calculated. Not strategic. The genuine article. Decades of patient architecture meeting a single variable it never successfully accounted for. And the intelligence behind it finally, fully, abandoning patience for the only thing left. The blade comes in from one vector. Force lightning threaded behind it. The room going white with the combined output of a power that has been building for 40 years and has never been fully released. Windu takes the blade. Obi-Wan takes the lightning. Anakin moves through the gap between them, inside the arc, close enough that the control field around the blade is within reach. And he gets his hand around Sidious's wrist. Not the weapon hand. The wrist. The grip is telekinetic and physical simultaneously, locking the joint, and Sidious feels it immediately, the force pressing against force, equal and opposite, the immovable answer to the irresistible argument. Sidious pulls. The grip holds. For 3 seconds they stand like that, inches apart. The rage on one side and the absolute steadiness on the other, and Anakin looks at the man who has spent a decade trying to turn him into a weapon aimed at the Republic, and finds, in the looking, nothing he did not already know. Windu's blade comes in. Sidious turns to meet it. His wrist doesn't. The joint gives. The blade drops. And in the fraction of a second between the blade leaving Sidious's hand and finding the floor, Anakin is already moving, forward, through the gap the dropped weapon created, his own blade coming up in the close, precise, committed arc of someone who has calculated this geometry for the last 90 seconds. The office goes still. The wind comes through the broken viewport. The city hums 60 floors below, indifferent and alive, every light in it continuing its business without interruption, the way cities do, the way life does, not knowing and not needing to know what just ended in a room above it. Mace Windu stands with his blade still active, breathing hard, his left hand pressed against his side. Obi-Wan is at Qui-Gon's shoulder, pulling him to his feet. Qui-Gon is upright. Wounded, present, Anakin stands in the cold air from the broken viewport and lets his blade go dark. The silence in the room is the kind that comes after something that has been building for a very long time has finally, completely, stopped. The wind through the broken viewport doesn't stop. It moves through the office with the patient indifference of air that has been doing this, crossing the city, finding gaps, continuing, for longer than any of the people in this room have been alive. It stirs the papers on the desk. It moves through Anakin's hair. It carries the sound of the city below, which has not changed. Which will not change. Which continues its 10 trillion simultaneous lives without any awareness that the machinery running beneath all of them has just been switched off. Windu deactivates his blade. The red light dies. Obi-Wan gets Qui-Gon to the couch along the office's west wall, not asking, just moving him there with the efficient care of someone who has been keeping this man alive through difficult situations for 20 years. Qui-Gon allows it. His left side is showing through the torn fabric, the wound real, the damage accessible. He will need a healer. He is not in danger. He looks at Anakin across the room with an expression that has no performance in it. Anakin looks back. There are no words that are adequate, and both of them know it, so neither of them attempts any. The look holds for a moment and then releases, the way these things do between people who have been talking honestly for 10 years and have learned that some exchanges don't require language. Mace Windu stands at the broken viewport looking out at the city. His back is to the room. He stands there for a long moment, not processing, Anakin thinks, just letting something finish that has been running in him for a long time. "We secure the building," Windu said finally. "Then the Senate. Then we make it public." He turns. His face is carrying something that is not quite exhaustion and not quite relief, the specific feeling of a weight that has been so present for so long that its absence feels at first like a different kind of pressure. In that order. "Yes," Anakin said. "It takes 6 hours. The Capitol Security Force, the portion of it that answers to the Senate rather than the Chancellor's office, responds to Jedi coordination with the disciplined efficiency of people who have been quietly concerned about the direction of things for longer than they have been able to say out loud. The Chancellor's private guard, the ones whose loyalty runs to the man rather than the office, are contained without violence. The Senate's emergency session is called before midnight. Anakin is not in the chamber for the session. He is in the corridor outside, sitting on a bench with his elbows on his knees and his eyes on the middle distance, listening to the muffled sound of 1,000 senators, learning what has been true for 40 years. Padmé is in the chamber. She had arrived an hour after the office, her composure absolute, and her eyes doing a rapid assessment of everyone in the room the moment she walked in. She had looked at Anakin for exactly 3 seconds. He had nodded once. She had nodded back and walked into the session to do her work, which is what she does. He sits on the bench and breathes and lets the hours run. The Jedi Temple at dawn looks the way it always looks, 5 spires above the city, the ancient stone catching the first light off a billion windows below. Anakin walks through the entrance hall for the 10,000th time and feels, for the first time, that the building is simply a building. A good building. A significant one. Full of people he respects and work that matters. But a building. Not a verdict on who he is, or a test he is perpetually taking. Just the place where his work happens to be located. The council chamber. Morning light through the curved windows, the floor in gold panels, the 12 seats in their circle. Several of the seats are empty, their occupants managing the Senate situation, the overnight coordination, the long logistical aftermath of dismantling 40 years of shadow infrastructure. The ones present are the ones who need to be here for this. Yoda, Mace Windu, his composure restored to its full surface. Obi-Wan, standing rather than sitting, his arms folded. His expression carrying the particular quality it gets when he is being careful not to show what he is feeling. Ki Adi Mundi. Plo Koon. Anakin stands in the center of the circle. He has stood here before, at 9 years old with his hands at his sides and his chin up, deciding not to be afraid of a room full of people. He is 22 now. The room is the same room. He is a significantly different person, and the decision not to be afraid is no longer a decision he has to make. It is simply a fact about him. The way his height is a fact. Settled and unremarkable. "There is something I need to tell the council," Anakin said. "I should have told you sooner. I didn't because," he finds the honest phrasing, "because I was concerned about the consequences. That was a failure of the standard I hold myself to, and I want to correct it now." He tells them about Padmé. All of it. The 4 visits that were framed as something else. The conversation at the low table with the tea neither of them drank. The 14 months of thinking beforehand. The decision to love honestly rather than secretly. The reasoning behind it. The 8 months since in which it has made him, as he predicted it would, better at everything he does. He does not apologize for the love. He apologizes for the concealment, which is the thing that was actually wrong, and only that. The chamber is quiet when he finishes. Yoda sits with his eyes half closed for a long time. Longer than usual. He said finally. And then nothing for another moment. Known, I did not. Sensed something, a peace in you, these past months that I could not account for. He opens his eyes fully. Understand now. I do. Windu looks at Anakin with the expression of a man whose model of someone has just been revised for the 4th time and has decided to stop being surprised by the revisions. The code, Windu said. As written. As we have taught it. I know the code, Anakin said. I've thought about it carefully. The mechanisms it's warning against are real. I've seen them work. I'm not arguing that attachment can't produce the things it says it produces. He holds Windu's gaze. I'm saying those mechanisms start with fear. And I know what I am when I'm afraid, because I was afraid for years, and I also know what I am when I'm not. The Council has seen both. You can make your own assessment. The silence this time is different from any previous silence in this room. It has a quality of genuine consideration in it. Not performance, not deliberation toward a predetermined conclusion, but actual thought. Obi-Wan, from his position by the window, says nothing. His expression says enough. It is Yoda who speaks. Revised. He said slowly, the code must be. Has needed revision, for longer than this council has admitted. He says it without drama, without apology, the same declarative honesty he brings to everything. A truth acknowledged late is still a truth. He looks at Anakin. The rank of master, earned, you have. In deed and in conduct, and in the honesty with which you stand here now. Mace Windu is quiet for a moment. Then, agreed. Naboo in the spring is the color of everything that is not Tatooine. Green in every direction, deep, saturated. The particular green of a planet that has had water and time enough to do what living things do when left to themselves. The lake house sits at the water's edge. The same water that was here the last time Anakin stood in this garden, the same soft sound it makes against the stone bank. The same quality of light in the late afternoon that makes everything look like it, is lit from within. He is 23. The Clone Wars ended 4 months ago. The Republic is reforming by degrees, slow, imperfect. The work of people doing their best with the machinery they have, which is how republics always reform. Padmé is part of that work. She will be part of it for a long time. So will he. Today is not a work day. Shmi Skywalker sits in the garden with Luke on her knee and Leia against her side, and she is telling them something. Anakin is too far away to hear what. Just the cadence of it. The unhurried rhythm of a woman who has all the time she needs for the first time in her life. Luke grabs her finger with his whole fist, and she looks down at him with an expression that Anakin has seen before. The same expression she wore in pre-dawn Mos Espa, walking past sleeping houses toward a ship. Fierce, quiet, converted entirely into the present moment. Padmé comes to stand beside him. She takes his hand, the same brief firm grip as always, and this time, doesn't release it. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are at the far end of the garden, deep in a conversation that has probably been running for 30 years in various forms. Their voices carry in fragments. Something about the living force. Something about patience. The comfortable shorthand of two people who have survived enough together that they have stopped needing to explain their references. Shmi looks up and sees Anakin watching and says something to Luke and Leia, too quiet to carry across the garden. Then she looks at her son directly, with the full attention she has always given him, and she says something else. He crosses the garden to hear it. I used to think, Shmi said when he is close enough, that the bravest thing you ever did was the night in Watto's shop. She looks down at the twins, then back up. I was wrong. He sits beside her on the garden bench. What changed your mind? She considers this with the seriousness it deserves. The bravest thing, she said, was putting down the bag. The lake makes its sound against the stone. The afternoon light does what afternoon light does on Naboo, turns everything golden, unhurried. As if the day has decided it is in no particular hurry to end. Luke makes a sound that is not quite a word. Leia responds to it as if it were. Anakin looks at his family in the Naboo light and finds, when he examines the feeling carefully, the same word that arrived in the winner's circle on Tatooine 14 years ago, quiet and certain and without drama attached to it. Whole. Just that, complete. The word that was always waiting at the end of this particular road, patient as the road itself, certain to be there when he finally arrived. He had put down the bag. He had always known he would. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.